Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to another episode about Gulp. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look on how to create a proper task for our JavaScript files, because right now we don't have anything here. We're just transferring a simple file. The problem is that if we want to write modern JavaScript commands, or we want to write and use the new scripting conventions, the scripting language of JavaScript like es6 and beyond, we cannot simply compile or put an outer fixer. We cannot do the same exact things that we're doing with es6, just automatically using one single package to compile and bundle all together and spit out the distribution ready folder. The JavaScript stuff, it's way more complicated and way more annoying to set up. So let's take a look together on how to do it. Before starting though, I want to just tell you that this method, it's my personal method. It's not the absolute truth or the absolute only method. So if you have a different method, if you feel more comfortable in using a different method, different packages or stuff like that, just go for it. I'm not saying that my approach is the perfect one. There are thousands of different approaches. You can do the same thing in many different ways. So if you don't agree with me and you think I'm doing something wrong, just like suggest a better method, but you can be free to use whatever thing you feel comfortable with. So let's continue. First, let's create a little bit of things in our really simple JavaScript file, because right now we don't really need to compile anything or bundle everything. Anything is just like a simple JavaScript file. So let's create a bunch of things with the new JavaScript conventions. So first, let's create a new folder inside the JS source folder called modules. And inside the modules, let's create a new file called, for example, app.js. This is a really simple file that pretty much you can find in every modern framework and stuff like that. Inside the app.js, we're gonna generate a class, a really simple class, and then we're gonna export and import inside our main script file. So this class is gonna be named app with uppercase, really simple. And inside the class, we can trigger the default constructor. And inside the constructor, we can have a really simple command. So for example, every time this class gets initialized, we can simply do a console info, and a console info is just a simple app initialized. Something like that. Something really simple, nothing complicated. We are not trying to learn ES6 right now, but the last thing that we have to do, we need to export this class or the default app class in order to make it usable by another class, or in order to make it usable by another file. So we're exporting the default app class with the default common JS. Let's go back in our script.js, and the thing that we want to do here, we want to simply import the app class, so the same name of the class, from the file that we just defined. So inside this file, let's tap the base root where the script is, and then we can say, hey, import the modules, and inside the module, find the file.js. Perfect. Now we can create a constant variable called app, that it's gonna be a new instance of the app class. So we're triggering, and this, if you know this, it's really similar to PHP. We're triggering the new instance of the app class that automatically on constructor, we should trigger the app initialize. That's perfect. Let's go in our index.html, and inside the footer here, just right at the end of the body, let's include a script and search for that script with the source tag to the same destination here, basically. So Gulp distribution JS, but here let's change to script.js, the distribution ready folder that we have. If we open our browser, we refresh, we open the console, and let's take a look at what's happening in the console, because if everything works, we should actually get this message, right? A console info app initialize. So let's open our terminal and let's trigger simply Gulp. Perfect. The style, JS, and everything, it's completed. If we open the compiled script.js, you will notice that nothing happens because we're just transferring whatever is happening in the main file here. So we still have the import, we have the constant app, new app declaration, and so on. So if we open our browser and we refresh, of course, we're gonna have tons of error because this file is not properly formatted to be readable by a browser. I mean, I think Google Chrome is capable of reading ES6 and it's like one of the most updated, but I'm sure like Firefox, Opera, Safari, version of Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, they're not there yet. So they cannot read ES6 JavaScript and beyond and above. They can only read regular vanilla JavaScript. And here we also have a problem that we don't have a folder called modules with the file app.js, because all these stuff are just here in our source folder. And I don't really want to copy and duplicate all the files with Gulp in here in the distribution folder. So the things that we have to do in our Gulp file, we need to update and change completely this JS task, use a lot of packages to bundle up all the files that we have in our modules folder, compile it, uglify it, minify the file, and then after that, save it in our distribution folders. Before doing that though, let's spend a couple of seconds to check a really cool sponsor that it's helping a lot the channel. And if you don't want to watch this little ad, you can totally skip it. But if you like this channel, if you like these tutorials and you want to support me a little bit, just watch this ad, and if you can, just link the description below. You don't have to buy anything, you don't have to spend any money. Just click on the link in the description, help me to get some traction, some triggering, and help me to maintain all these tutorials free and this channel up and running and super awesome as it is right now. So I'll talk to you in a couple of seconds. From a developer that hates plugins, here's a plugin that doesn't suck. Elementor is a live page builder for WordPress. It's amazing. It's open source, faster than the competition, easy to use. It doesn't require any coding for anyone to just build a beautiful page. I think I'm gonna say it. Yes, I'm gonna say it. It's the best page builder for WordPress. I said it. It's totally free for you to use it, download it, and install it on all the websites that you want. And if you really like it, you should consider buying the Pro version. That it's not expensive at all, and it comes with tons of new features. Click the link in the description below the video to learn more. Awesome, after that amazing ad, now we can start defining a bunch of things. So first, let's comment these out. Let's write down all the steps that we have to do in order to properly compile the JavaScript. So first of all, we need to Browserify things, and the Browserify is a package. Actually, let me write everything in a comment because this is just like the list of steps that we have to create. And Browserify is the first important package that we need to include because it's the package that handles the module. So it's the package that it's capable of importing modules in our main script, bundling up all together, and actually requiring the script without leaving the dependency of an external file. It just bundles up all together. So that's perfect. That's the first thing that we need. The second thing that we need to transform the file with Babelify. And Babelify is another NPM module that has the ability to convert es6 JavaScript, or like the new script convention, to regular vanilla JavaScript that is understandable and readable by every browser. In order to use Babelify, we need to specify which version of Babelify we want to use, because there are a lot of different versions, different releases, different pre-packaged options that we can use. Our version should be the environmental version, the default one. And if you're kind of confused about this, don't worry, we're gonna set it up later and hopefully we're gonna have like a better idea of what to do. Then after this, we need to bundle all together because now we included all the modules. We transformed all the declaration, we Babelify to a more readable vanilla JavaScript. Now we need to bundle everything inside one single file. We can tap the source of every single file that we're checking and we are dealing with. We can rename it with the extension of .min because we wanna compile and minify also this file. Then we can buffer this file, and the buffer is really important because after all this stuff, if we want to add other things that we're going to generate the source map, we're going to save and store the files and stuff like that, we need to buffer it. We cannot keep going with the Browserify things without the buffer, and these are two kind of dependent things. And at this point, we can create the source map that is super duper important. We can uglify our file to minify everything and do the same thing that we're doing for the minify option of our style. Then we can write the source map because here we were initializing the source map as well, like we are doing in the CSS. And then finally we can save it in our distribution folder. So This looks insane, and it kinda is. It's not like the easiest thing to understand and the easiest thing to remember. Luckily, I did it many times, and I have this kind of a set workflow that I just copy paste every time, and it works. It was kind of complicated to set it up, but yeah, let's do one by one. So first, let's define all the JavaScript things that we need to include in our list of files. So let's go up here, and here we have our JSRC, which is perfect. Let's create a final variable for our JavaScript called JS files, and in the JS files is gonna be basically an array of all the files that we want to check. And I'm doing this because you could have, for example, a JavaScript script for the front end and an admin script, and you want to trigger that specific workflow for all the single files that are going in different locations. For example, one on the front end, one on the back end, one for the admin area, one for the checkout process, or like if you have specific bundled files for specific section, you can just put them all here inside these JS files array, and it's gonna be pretty easy to manage. Right now it seems kind of silly because we have just one single file, but at least we're setting up our Gulp task to be modular and accept multiple files, so let's stick with that. Now inside the JS, what we have to do, we can delete this stuff because we don't need it. First, let's tab our JS files variable that we just defined, and with the map function, that is the JavaScript function that is going to loop through all our items inside our array, we can define inside a nameless function, and the nameless function is going to pass automatically the single entry. So every time the map loops, we're going to have the single file that we define here. So in our case, just JSRC, but if we have another file here and another file here, every time we loop, this entry will match the first, the second, and the third file. So we can handle those files separately, and we don't bundle it together or trick all together. So that's perfect. And you can name this file however you want. You can name it just like file. Entry makes more sense because it doesn't interfere with any built-in method of Gulp or other packages that we're going to use. Perfect. Now we need to return all the things that we define here, and it's gonna be super easy. Actually, it's not gonna be super easy, but it's gonna be pretty exciting. So first, let's define the Browserify extension, and the Browserify extension requires for us to manually specify which file we want to tackle, and we want to handle it in the list of entries. So in our case, inside the curly brackets, let's specify the option entries, and the option entries is going to be, of course, equal to our entry file because we already have that entry file. But let's specify the entries inside the square brackets because the entries is an array list. We have one single entry that it's here, so it's perfect, super easy, super simple. Before continuing, let's install the actual Browserify package because we're tapping that, but we didn't install it. So let's open our terminal, let's clean it up a little bit and say npm install savedev and just the simple name Browserify. Let's give it a couple of seconds as usual. Perfect. Now that we have the Browserify package, we can define another variable called, of course, Browserify that requires the Browserify package that we just installed, and you can check it also in the package.json. We have it here, and which is fantastic. Let's continue by after the Browserify, we can concatenate on another line. You can keep concatenating on the same line, but on another line it's better, it's more organized. As I said, we need to transform with the Babelify, so that's another package. Let's trigger the transform, and inside the transform we want to transform all these entries that we specify here, in our case just one. We want to transfer it to Babelify, and the Babelify need to accept inside the curly brackets presets inside the square brackets, because also this is an array of presets, but in our case it's just one preset, the env. And this is kind of more convoluted and more complicated, but let's proceed step by step. Let's open again our terminal and let's install, in this case, again, the new package, Babelify. And in order to make this work, we need to also install other two dependencies for the Babelify to work. So let's install Babel-core, and then again npm install savedev the Babel-preset env. That is the preset that we want to use in our compiling of es6 JavaScript. Wonderful. We don't need now in the gulp file.js to include all of those packages that we installed, but we need to just include one single package, the Babelify package that we're using. So let's duplicate this line. Let's go inside our package.json. Look at all these beautiful packages that are installed here. Let's copy Babelify and let's replace this with Babelify and require Babelify so we can actually use it here. So what we did here, we installed all these stuff that are super confusing, and I agree with you. The problem is that with JavaScript ES6, because it's kind of complicated and needs to be compiled by some specific compilers, in order to compile it properly, you need these three packages together. I'm not sure if Webpack has a better and faster way of doing it, but this has been always the struggle with ES6 and compiling with Gulp. It's kind of convoluted, but you need these Babel core that has all the packages necessary for the Babelify to work, and we need this env preset in order to tap that specific preset that we want to tap to compile our script. Another thing that we have to do in the package.json, unfortunately, we have to manually edit. We need to define the preset that we want to use it, in our case, the one that we just installed. So after the list of dev dependencies, let's put a comma. And inside here, we can define, hey, for the Babel package that we're actually using, semicolon, I want to use the presets. And inside the presets, I want to have a list of presets with the square brackets because it's an array for the env, the same package that I'm tapping here. And unfortunately, in Gulp, we cannot tap this package and use this package directly. We need to define for Babelify to use this preset, we need to define it in the package.json in this way. If this is confusing, you can also write it all on a single line if you want, but if you have an auto formatter for JSON, it's gonna put on all different lines, but this is fine as well. That's perfect. Let's continue. After we transform our full list of entries with Babelify, we can bundle all together. And this is not a package that we need to install because it's a default package of Gulp. So we are set to go. We don't need to install anything, luckily. Now we can pipe another method that is the source method. So we are checking if the entry source that we're tapping here is still piped, and we are tapping the source in order to grab it after the bundling of the Browserify and Babelify. These two steps are important because if we don't have these two steps and we pipe something else, we're gonna lose the track of our entry. This is unfortunately how it works. It was like really convoluted to set it up properly. And in order to use the source, we need to install the vinyl source stream that it's necessary in order to use it together with Browserify. So again, let's open our terminal and let's say save dev install vinyl dash source dash stream and hit enter. Perfect. Now let's copy this stuff. Let's go back in our Go file, and after the Babelify, let's require also the vinyl source stream, but let's just call it source because I'm using this source in my full JavaScript task here, piping the source of the entry. Awesome. After sourcing the entry, we can pipe the rename, and this is going to be identical to what we're doing with the SCSS. We're renaming with the extension name set to .min.js. And this is another type of renaming here. The renaming, we're just adding the suffix. In the rename here, we can actually use the option extension name.min.js, but you can use either or both. It's totally fine. It's just to show you that we have different examples and different options for the rename method of Gulp. After the rename, we need to pipe again another custom package that it's called buffer, and also this one we need to require it, and also this one it's part of the vinyl family. So let's open our terminal again and let's tap npm install save dev vinyl dash buffer, and the vinyl source stream and the vinyl buffer go always together. After we do something, we manipulate the file. So now that it's installed, let's copy this, let's go back in our Gulp, let's duplicate this, called simply buffer, and let's replace vinyl source stream with vinyl buffer. So now we have also this package that we can use here. After the buffer, that finally we rename the file, we compile all together, we can create a source map before uglifying our file. So let's pipe again our source maps.init. We can define custom options, and our custom option in our case is load maps. Then it's gonna be equal to true. And by setting the load maps to true, we will tell to our source map initializing to load existing maps for source files. So if, for example, we have other existing maps in other files that we are bundling all together, to load also those and package them all together. After the source map, we can finally pipe the uglify method of Gulp, that also in this case we don't have it. And the uglify is basically identical to the output style compress of Sass. Basically it's minifying the entire file, but of course we don't have a default option that we can use as Sass. We need to use a unique package to uglify and minify the entire script file. So let's also in this case install our Gulp uglify extension. Open our terminal and let's go inside npm install safedev gulp-uglify and hit enter. Let's copy the uglify name. Let's scroll all the way up. And here, let's duplicate the Sass because we already have the Gulp prefix. So gulp-uglify, that's perfect. Let's check the terminal to confirm that everything went properly. Gulp-uglify, that's awesome. Nice. After the uglify, we can write our source map. So let's pipe once again the source maps dot write, and also in this case the location of the source map should be the same location of the file. So let's specify the base root of where this file is as well, and then we can finally we're at the end, pipe the Gulp destination, our JS dist folder. Awesome. Let's save it. Let's go back in our terminal, let's clear the terminal, and let's trigger the JavaScript task to see if we actually have an error. Gulp JS and hit enter. And here we actually have an error, yes, but it's not an error in our Gulp task, it's an error in our app.js file, which is pretty silly because I forgot to actually the constructor in JavaScript is a method itself that needs the regular brackets to be initialized. Sorry about that. Okay, let's open again our terminal. Let's clear this message. Gulp JS. Done. Look what we have here. If we access our distribution folder, our JavaScript, you see we have something wrong. Like our script.js, the old one is still there, so we can just delete it and it's totally fine. Can close this file, don't save it. But here we have a source folder, JS folder. Inside we have our minified script, which is fantastic. Look at that. This is vanilla JavaScript readable by the browser. And then we have our source map in the same directory. The problem is that this folder directory was repeated from our source file. And the problem is that because in our JS file, in our entry, we're actually having the full location of our JavaScript file specified in the entry that we're dealing with. So every time we tap the entry and we say, hey, do something about it, the entire Gulp script for Babelify, bundle it, uglify, and writing the source map is gonna also consider the folders that we specify in the full entry. So we need to update a little bit this stuff. First, let's duplicate the JS source and let's update it with JS folder, and let's leave only the JS folder here. The JS source should only point to the actual script.js, and that's perfect. Now we can copy the JS folder, and we can say that in the entries here, instead of just dealing with the entry, we should deal with the JS folder plus the entry concatenated. So basically, when we are mapping through the loop, the entry only has the script.js, so it doesn't come with the source and JS folder. But when we're dealing with the Browserify, we're specifying the entire entries plus the folder, so we can deal properly with the file, but without repeating the entire folder structure, the folder hierarchy here, and creating this issue here that then when we update the distribution and we publish all our compiled files in the distribution folder, we're having basically the full hierarchy or structure from our source folder. We don't really want to do that, so let's delete this stuff. And after this update, let's trigger again Gulp JS task. Awesome. You can see now in the JS folder, we just have the script.min.js and the script.min.js.map, which is the source map of our JavaScript file. Fantastic. Let's go in our index.html. Let's update this to say, hey, tap the script.min.js. Let's go back in our front end. Let's refresh. And here you can see that in the console we have app initialize. So if we refresh the page, app initialize, because we are triggering that class through JavaScript, minified JavaScript file. That is the one that is actually getting included in our app, which is fantastic. This is pretty great. So this was a particularly long and kind of complicated lesson. If you're confused, I suggest you to watch it a bunch of times. And if you don't really understand why I'm using all these packages, just copy the name, access the npm repository, and find these packages. As I said at the beginning of this lesson, this is not the only and through and just the last method that you have to use. This is the method that works for me, and I found it that yes, it's kind of long and complicated, but after I wrote these, there are like 10-15 lines, I just copy this task. Every time I need it to use, I install all the packages that I need to use. There are just like 4 or 5. And then by setting up the preset for the Babelify files, I can easily compile the es6 with my Gulp project without having the issue of browser compatibility. Keep writing, keep coding, and keep testing. If you change one of these piping, what happens? If you switch the transform, if you remove the bundle, the buffer, see what's going on every time you change something. So you're gonna get acquainted with this really complicated task that it's pretty much only for JavaScript things. So it's pretty much it for today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you want, you can spend a couple of minutes on the support me page of my website, where you can find all different ways and methods to support me, support my channel, and help me to do better videos and better tutorials for you. Thank you again, guys, and until the next lesson, as usual, happy coding.